Okay, so have you ever read a book that felt like it was literally at war with itself? Well, we're about to dive into a novel that's not just a story, it's this fierce debate that's raging within its own pages. It spends the first half building this beautiful, hopeful argument, and then the second half just tries to brutally tear it all down. So what happens when a book's greatest enemy is itself?
She wrote, before she wrote, there was already the cut. This is the line that kicks off the whole thing. And it just makes you stop and think, right? It's asking us to totally reconsider what writing even means. You know, maybe it's not just about words on a page. Maybe it's about making a mark, leaving a trace, an act of survival that came way before any alphabet.
And that's really the big question we're digging into here. What if the act of making a meal, or just remembering a story, or even the act of simply enduring, what if all of that is its own kind of writing? A kind of text that we can actually learn to read.
So, let's get into it. The first half of this novel, called The Unfinished Dictation, lays out this really powerful case. It's basically an argument for connection, for the idea that we can use theory and language to make sense of our lives and maybe even heal our wounds. So we meet our protagonist, Xóchitl. Her entire life is about navigating this in-between space, this hyphen she lives in. And she's brilliant. So she turns to these big, complex academic ideas to try and build a bridge between her family's history and her own life in modern America.
So one of the tools she uses is this concept called difference. Now, I know it sounds super complicated, but for her, it's intensely personal. It's the reason her name Xóchitl gets twisted into Xochi by her teachers. See, the true meaning of her identity is constantly being pushed off, deferred, never fully allowed to arrive. It's a way for her to put a name to a kind of quiet, everyday violence.
She's basically living in a state of nepantla. And this isn't just about a physical border, it's a psychological one. It's that feeling of not quite belonging here or there, of being in this constant state of becoming something new. But for Xóchitl, this isn't a weakness, it's actually a source of power, a way of seeing the world from all these different angles at once. And then, Xóchitl finally finds a method that feels right, that feels true, testimonial. This isn't about just objectively reporting facts from a distance. No, it's about weaving your own body, your own pain, your own history right into the fabric of the story you're telling. It's the bridge she's been looking for between her academic world and her grandmother's real, lived life.
And we see her whole life as a series of these border crossings, right? The erasure of her culture at school, the amazing moment she discovers a book that finally makes her feel seen, even entering the intimidating world of the university. Every step is a crossing. But the final, most shocking border she has to cross comes with a single phone call.
This is it. This is the moment the whole first half of the book has been building towards. In her grief after the funeral, Xóchitl discovers a secret archive. Her grandmother, Esperanza, the woman who always insisted she couldn't write, whose knowledge was in her hands and her cooking, she had been writing all along. It's a total shock.
And we're not talking about just a few jotted notes. We're talking 53 notebooks. 53! An entire secret library filled with decades of thoughts and dreams and recipes and ideas. A whole lifetime of testimony, just hidden away in a closet. And at this point in the novel, it feels like this huge victory, like proof that connection is possible, that theory and life can finally come together.
But just when you're feeling that sense of triumph, the novel completely shatters it. The second half, which is titled Remainder, comes in with a totally different voice, a different author, and one single devastating argument. That whole promise of connection, it was just a beautiful lie. I mean, the conflict is just so stark. On one side, you've got this hopeful project of the unfinished dictation, and on the other, Remainder comes in and argues this is all just an intellectual fantasy. It insists that theory is absolutely useless against real physical pain, that solidarity is basically an illusion, and that some wounds can never, ever be healed by pretty words.
The first part of the novel lands on this really beautiful, hopeful note. After finding the notebooks, Xochitl has this incredible realization that all her academic work kind of missed the point. It wasn't about applying theories to her grandmother, it was just about listening to her. It's the absolute high point of the book's optimism.
And then, bam, this second voice, APenex Daakua, comes in with this absolute hammer blow. It takes these wonderful ideals of connection and solidarity and calls them an impossible burden. It argues that out here in the real world, these beautiful theories just lead to burnout and failure. The whiplash is just wow.
Yeah, Remainder doesn't just disagree, it systematically takes apart the first half piece by piece. It argues that theory forgets the simple brutal fact of a body in pain, that real-world political solidarity always collapses under its own weight, that trying to write in a language like English is a compromised colonial act from the get-go. And then, the real gut punch. It suggests that the whole idea that art can change the world might just be a comforting fantasy we tell ourselves.
So, after that complete intellectual demolition, where in the world does that leave us? Well, the genius of this novel is that it never gives us an answer. It refuses to pick a side. The real power is in forcing us to hold these two completely opposite ideas in our heads at the very same time.
Ultimately, the book pushes us, the readers, right back into that uncomfortable space we learned about earlier, the Nepantla. We're left hanging in the gap between the beautiful, necessary attempt to create meaning and the harsh, cynical reality that it might all fail. The point isn't to find the right answer, but to be willing to just grapple with that tension.
And that is how it leaves us. It turns its central metaphor right back on us. The story of connection and failure, it isn't over. Esperanza's Dictation, Xóchitl's project, it's all been handed over to you, the reader. It asks, faced with this hope of connection and this brutal reality of failure, what are you going to do? What story will you choose to write? The Dictation is unfinished.